Despite calls from lawmakers and other officials, President Duterte says the fuel excise tax is here to stay. He also approved his economic team's recommendation to provide a 200 peso monthly assistance for the poorest households. AC Nichols gives us the details.
As ordinary Filipinos struggle over rising fuel prices, the government faces a strong demand to suspend the collection of fuel excise taxes for immediate relief. But President Rodrigo Duterte backs the country's economic manager's recommendation to retain the fuel excise taxes. He also approves a 200 peso monthly subsidy for the most affected households for 1 year.
Kung kailan po ito may bibigay, hintayin muna natin lumabas ang guidelines po ng Department of Budget and Management. Nakasulat naman sa Budget Circular kung DSWD o LGU ang mga ngasiwa. Kung DSWD, mayroon silang listahan o tinatawag na master list na kanilang ginagamit o ginamit nung SAP distribution.
In the last cabinet meeting, Finance Chief Sonny Dominguez tells President Duterte revenues of over 1 billion pesos will be lost without fuel excise taxes and VAT. He adds that the expected revenue from fuel taxes have already been allocated, and non-collection will result in more borrowing or bigger debt.
Those expenditures are for our build, for the salaries of government employees, including soldiers, including policemen, including teachers. So that money has already been allocated.
Socioeconomic Chief Carl Chua also warns against increasing minimum fares and wages. He says this could do more harm than good, as it can bring about higher inflation.
We should be concerned not only for one sector or one type of worker. Dapat po lahat po ay concern po natin.
As for affected employees, the Labor Department is proposing to spend 24 billion pesos to provide a 3-month subsidy. The agency says this should be provided from April to June to about 1 million beneficiaries. The Energy Department, meantime, backs a shorter work week.
We also support, Mr. Mayor, yung panukala na 4-day week work at saka yung panukala din po, palawigin muna natin ang work from home para sa ganun po mabawasan ng pagbiyahe ng ating mga mamamayan.
Malacanang says these are still under consideration and the President has yet to decide on these proposals. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
A number of jeepney drivers and operators finally received the 6,000 peso fuel subsidy. Transport groups FEDJADAP and LTOP tell CNN Philippines the amount was credited to some of their members' Pantawid Pasada cards beginning yesterday, the day the government promised to begin payouts.
Puna po nung nag-isip po sila sa bangko, meron na naman po pumapasok mga ilan-ilan. Sa Laguna po at Batangas, halos 50% plus na po yung nakatanggap. Sa La Union, medyo marami na, saka dito sa Pangasinan, sa Dagupan, at saka doon sa Ilocosur, mayroon na rin, at saka doon sa Baguio, mayroon na rin.
Of the 2.5 billion peso cash aid, a bulk or 1.75 billion pesos will go to those with government permits, including drivers of PUVs, taxis, and TNVS. Tricycle drivers will receive 625 million pesos and delivery service riders 125 million, but they will have to wait a little longer. The Interior Department has given local governments until March 19th to submit their list of tricycle drivers to be forwarded to the LTFRB. The regulator is also waiting for the list of delivery service riders from the Trade Department.
May pinila pa na kami, nagpasa na. Hinintay lang namin.
Kung ano po ibibigay po sa amin, tatanggapin po namin ang bukas sa kalooban po namin yun.
Sana lahat makatanggap. Pwede pong bigyan kami ng discount sa gasolinahan po, ganun po. Makakatulong na po namin.
While other drivers are still waiting for their fuel subsidy, here's some welcome news. Energy officials and an oil industry source say Filipinos can expect a pump price rollback next week. Chrissy Di Matula tells us by how much.
After 11 weeks of consecutive oil price hikes, relief may just be around the corner for public transport drivers. The Energy Department says a price rollback is most likely to happen soon.
Mas maganda kung bababa nila yung diesel kasi masyado mahirapan yung mga driver eh. Saka wala na kami kinikita kasi sobrang taas ang diesel.
Sana ibalik nila yung dati, kasi dati lang 49 yan, yung naging 72 eh.
In an interview with CNN Philippines, the DOE said some events across the globe will likely cause a dip in crude oil prices. These include a reduced demand from China and Ukraine stepping back from its plan to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, reducing tensions with Russia.
The price of crude oil is actually very volatile, but it had keep on increasing because of the sustained pronouncement from the US, UK, EU of the sanctions against Russia. But recently, there was a statement from the Ukrainian president that they're not interested anymore in actually joining the NATO, but notably in China, which actually imposed a massive lockdown. So those are really the two main this week.
In a cabinet meeting this week, Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi said gasoline prices could drop by at least 5 pesos per liter, diesel by 12 pesos per liter. Prices of gasoline and diesel recently increased by more than 7 pesos and 13 pesos per liter, respectively. Transport groups have been taken to the streets calling for the suspension of the excise tax for fuel.
Definitely a price rollback is something that we anticipate and welcome. Pero sa dulo, itong price rollback na ito ay gaano ba ka-significant?
While the price rollback has yet to happen, drivers are hoping that for now, they will receive the subsidy promised by the government. They understand the need for more transportation options, which is why they don't want to give up on their operations as much as possible. Chrissy De Matulak, CNN Philippines.
Rising oil prices have another casualty, the airline industry. As our senior correspondent Lois Calderon reports, just when airliners are again about to take off, expensive jet fuel is throwing a wrench into their plans.
U.S. Navy retiree Brian McCann and Filipina Evelyn Bacho met on Facebook a year ago and fell in love long distance in the midst of a raging pandemic. As soon as the Philippines allowed foreign tourists to enter borders without quarantine in February, McCann flew in.
I came here to get married to my fiance here. We traveled to the Bohol region or the island. That's where she was from.
The couple has set their wedding for this year, but more expensive jet fuel could make plane tickets less affordable. McCann flies back to Boston, Massachusetts, and hopes to return to Manila in a few months.
Fuel prices, right? Did you mention something like that? Oh yeah, that's going to create a problem for me when I have to travel back here, back and forth to visit her. I'll try to find the best deal available, of course. Yeah, money-wise.
Flag carrier Philippine Airlines wants aviation regulators to review the fuel surcharge matrix amid rising global oil. PAL President Captain Stanley Nang says jet fuel accounts for about 50% of the airliner's operating expenses. The Civil Aeronautics Board has the power to issue a fuel surcharge matrix for domestic and international flights.
It's really a good time actually for airlines right now. Just except for the fuel price, of course, but we actually don't think that's going to stay up there for a long period of time. We're actually asking the help of CAB for fuel surcharge, but of course it should be still reasonably priced for the consumers to actually not reasonable for them to fly still.
PAL has announced it's offering 5 million seats on sale for as low as $81 for return international flights as it celebrates its 81st year of operations. PAL earlier announced in January it has emerged from bankruptcy proceedings after a U.S. court approves its restructuring plan to slash debts by more than $2 billion. It's boosting its domestic flights to return to pre-pandemic level by April. It has also added more flights to Singapore, Australia, and Japan, while plans are underway to soon resume flights to Bali, Macau, and mainland China.
PAS has earned a new life, not just to live, but to thrive. The new PAL is smaller and streamlined to fit the new normal.
The tie that binds airlines and passengers is like a love story. Each one is the other's lifeline, so to speak, separated by the pandemic. So when borders reopened, both sides cheered. But rising jet fuel costs could spoil a happy ending. Lois Calderon, CNN, Philippines.
More than 100 Filipino seafarers are still stranded in Ukraine as the war in Eastern Europe marks its third week. Tristan Nadal tells us authorities hope to speed up rescue efforts.
In the last few days, sirens and warnings have filled the air in a port near Odessa in Ukraine. A vessel carrying 12 Filipino crew members is currently docked there. But despite the chaos, the seafarers say they prefer to stay on board.
Yung narinig lang namin yung mga warning ng boat, tapos pag nag-warning po, kami sila rin, nag-iintop yung mga operation dito lahat. Tapos parang tatago, parang umaalis sila dito sa bandara. Tapos kami rin, sabi rin na opisina namin, kung may ganun, take shelter namin kami, papasok din kami dito sa accommodation ng barko namin para po safety na rin po.
The Filipinos say they are far from the war zone, but if things get worse, they are ready to evacuate anytime.
Hindi naman po namin pwede abandonahin yung barko namin kasi mali naman po yun pag gawin namin, abandonahin namin na walang abiso ng opisina namin pati yung principal po.
The Foreign Affairs Department is closely monitoring the plight of stranded seafarers in the Black Sea. Some 472 Filipino seafarers are affected by the Ukraine-Russia conflict, with around 150 of them still aboard their vessels.
Extracting them or evacuating them has become more difficult because of the ongoing fighting.
The DFA is also appealing to manning agencies and ship owners to cooperate in extracting the seafarers from their vessels.
Because the welfare and safety of our seafarers are their primary responsibility. That's why I would like to appeal to them to help out, and shoulder the cost of extracting or evacuating our seafarers.
Barring any changes or flight delays, the Department of Foreign Affairs aims to finish its repatriation of Filipinos who were evacuated from Ukraine to the Philippines this week. Tristan Nadal, CNN Philippines.
Around 286 Filipinos have returned home from war-torn Ukraine. When we come back on Newsnight, we look at how some presidential hopefuls are reacting to the government's refusal to suspend the fuel excise tax despite rising pump prices. And former Senator Bongo Marcos finally speaks up on the controversies hounding his candidacy. Among these, his family's or his late father's unpaid estate tax. Details after the break.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back. Again, our top story, the government will retain the fuel excise tax despite rising oil prices. President Duterte also approved his economic team's recommendation provide monthly unconditional cash transfers of 200 pesos to poor families for a year. As George Quiles tells us, at least one presidential candidate is against these measures.
For Panfilo Lacson, the administration should reconsider maintaining fuel excise tax. Lacson says he recognizes possible revenue losses in suspending the tax, but adds the public needs immediate relief from skyrocketing fuel prices. He adds the government can do more than just provide a monthly cash assistance to poor families.
Hindi naman natin sasabing pag suspend forever or suspended forever. Ang sinasabi natin, temporary. Kung ilang months itong nangyayaring walang tigil ng taas, pwede naman taasan yung threshold. Yun ang aming recommendation. Against 200 per month, napakaliit. Hindi kakayanin yun, hindi makakasapat.
On the other hand, Bongbong Marcos agrees with keeping the fuel excise tax. He even proposes the return of a general fuel subsidy carried out during the term of his late father, the Oil Price Stabilization Fund.
Kung bumibili tayo ng langis ng isang whatever the price is, $100, whatever it is then some of that increase will be covered by the oil subsidy. So that kung may increase man na umabot pa sa tao, ay palitin na lang. At dahan-dahanin natin. At yun ang pagpalagay ko support. At mararamdaman na ng lahat ng tao. Hindi lamang yung nakalista doon sa ayuda, sa IX or whatever. That's my thinking there.
In the meantime, Faisal Mandato calls for a once-a-week private car holiday.
Maganda po yung isang araw na wala lalabas na sasakyan ng mga pribadong Pilipino. Yan po dapat magkaroon tayo kung tayo ay totoo na mayroon tayong disiplina sa ating sarili at mayroon tayong spiritual formation bawat isang tao.
George Quiles, CNN Philippines.
Presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos is leaving the issue of his family's the issue of his late father's estate tax that the family needs to settle up to lawyers, but not without saying, quote, there is plenty of fake news involved. Now that's after the political party of Isko Moreno brought up the controversy, Rex Remigio reports.
Bongbong Marcos has not granted interviews with the media before or after his campaign activities recently. But in a turnaround, the presidential candidate discusses in an online media forum a number of issues facing him, including his family's unsettled estate taxes worth more than 200 billion pesos.
Well, there's a lot of fake news involved there. Let's leave it to the lawyers to discuss it. Because the so-called facts that they quote are not facts at all. They are just presumption there.
While calling the tax information as presumptions, Marcos at the same time says he is not familiar with his cases. He adds he will follow the court decision. In 1997, the Supreme Court ruled that the Marcos family must settle unpaid estate taxes. Hours after Marcos's appearance in the forum, the Acción Democrático Party of another presidential candidate, Isko Moreno, shows a letter supposedly from the Bureau of Internal Revenue. The BIR said it sent a written demand to the Marcoses in December 2021 regarding their tax liabilities.
We have received a copy of a letter of Commissioner Dulay ng BIR na sinulatan sila noong December 2, 2021 na sinisingil na ng buwis ang pamilya Marcos sapagkat ito raw ay marapat lamang na mapunta na sa gobyerno. Now, if that is the case, this is a very good asset. Malaking pera ito, 200 billion na pwede natin ipang-ayuda sa tao.
CNN Philippines is trying to get the Marcos camp's response to the letter shown by Acción Democrático. Rex Remigio, CNN Philippines.
The Commission on Elections is set to look into the reported distribution of cash envelopes during the campaign of Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte in Nueva Ecija yesterday. Comelec Commissioner George Garcia said he would bring up the issue where supporters reportedly received 500 pesos after the campaign rally outside the governor's residence in the town of Santa Rosa. Some supporters say they did not know where these envelopes came from and for what purpose. Marcos's party, the Partido Federal, says it will check what happened and that it rejects vote buying. The spokesperson of Vice President Leni Robredo says she will be thankful if President Duterte openly endorses her as his successor. That is, if the endorsement is not a transactional agreement.
In other words, it's not an endorsement in exchange for something else. It's not to say that she will actively seek it or court the endorsement, but if it's given freely, then she will be thankful for it. Obviously, this is an election. And in an election, if somebody comes forward and says, I'm going to support you, then the response is thank you, and move on.
Still on the elections, COMELEC grants the request of Robredo's lead counsel to conduct a random sampling of ballots for the May polls. The 7-member en banc has agreed to let political parties and representatives of candidates pull 3 to 5 ballots meant for each city or municipality, following the plea of election lawyer Romulo Macalintal. Process is scheduled for next week.
Yan po ay mga reasonable na pakiusap at dapat po ay pinagbibigyan upang maging transparent, maging accountable ang lahat ng ginagawa natin dito. Kailangan nakita natin na yung mga produkto na ginagawa natin dito kapag ay sadyang tama, sadyang magagamit natin sa aming eleksyon at sadyang bagay doon sa ating mga vote counting natin.
COMELEC also gave a walkthrough of the ballot printing process Tuesday as groups criticized the poll body for supposed lack of transparency. Billions of pesos worth of illegal drugs were seized in an operation in Infanta, Quezon. Authorities intercepted 3 vans at a checkpoint along Barangay Comon on Tuesday morning, carrying about 10 billion pesos worth of shabu. That's equivalent to 80 sacks, or about 1,650 kilograms of the illegal drug. 10 suspects were arrested. More stories coming up. The Philippines Miss World Bet sends some love to her supporters a day before competing for the coveted crown, while global superstar BTS is taking center stage again for the 64th Grammy Awards. Stay tuned.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back. The Alaska Aces lived to fight another day in their final PBA conference after beating the NLEX Road Warriors 93-79. It was a rocky start for the Aces in their quarterfinal match, but they caught the lead in the second quarter. Alaska is vying for a playoff spot to eventually grab their last PBA championship with the Governor's Cup. Last month, Alaska announced that this would be their last season after almost 4 decades. We have less than 2 months until the Southeast Asian Games. Bolívar Sosa tells us how the country's top spikers in beach and indoor volleyball will prepare overseas.
Intensive training camps set in different parts of the globe await the country's national volleyball teams as they gear up for the 31st Southeast Asian Games. This time, the Philippine squads will be setting up camp outside the usual Asian borders. As early as Tuesday, the men's and women's beach volleyball teams, led by 2019 SEA Games bronze medalists Cici Rondina and Bernadette Pons, left for Brisbane, where they will get a chance to train and compete with Australian nationals.
Sobrang excited po kami sa magiging training po namin doon. And I know na sobrang dami po namin matututunan doon at papaulit po namin yun para sa SEA Games and gagawin talaga namin yung best po namin.
On March 20, the men's indoor volleyball team will fly to Qatar for a 2-week training camp that will run until April 5, with the squad eyeing to eclipse their historic silver medal finish during the 30th edition of the SEA Games held on home soil.
Kung ano naman yung naging kulang namin noong 2019, magandang experience tong papunta namin ng Qatar dahil I think makakatulong yun to improve the team and yung chemistry.
3 days after the 2022 PBL Open Conference comes to a close, the women's indoor team will set up camp in Brazil beginning April 12. Bannered by key returnees Eliza Valdez, Jaja Santiago, and Abby Maraño, the 16-woman pool will look to improve on their 4th-place finish in 2019.
This foreign training is so of paramount importance because it gives us a lot of exposure, and I'm trying to bring our teams towards on the other side of the globe, to Europe and South America. Enough of Asia, we have a lot of experience already in Japan, Thailand, Korea, China. Our target is really to have a medal. Not even to have a medal, is to get the gold medals in the 4 teams.
The 31st Southeast Asian Games will run from May 12 to 23 in Hanoi, Vietnam. Pauline Verzosa, CNN Philippines.
But missing from the lineup of indoor volleyball players are notable athletes like Kim Dee, Kale Mao, Gia Morado, Jasmine Nabor, and Dindin Manabat. They declined invitations to join the national team. Entertainment news now. Before tomorrow's Miss World pageant, Tracy Marie Bears made sure to show some love and gratitude to supporters. The country's representative thanked fans online, calling those who continue to believe in her rare gems. Tracy also showed off an elegant gown designed by Francis Libiran. Find out if the Philippines will win its 2nd Miss World crown. The pageant airs tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning, live from Puerto Rico, with a pre-pageant special at 8 a.m. with our senior anchor Pinky Webb, only here on CNN Philippines.
Happening in Puerto Rico. Catch the coronation night here on CNN Philippines.
Updates now in music. K-pop sensation BTS is performing on the Grammy stage for the first time in person. The group is among the featured artists for the April 3 event in Las Vegas. BTS members are also attending as nominees, up for Best Pop Duo/Group Performance for their hit Butter. They first sang for the Grammys last year through a pre-taped video in Seoul because of COVID restrictions. And Ed Sheeran adds more stops for his Mathematics tour. Chart-topping artists will head to Australia and New Zealand from February to March next year. As for shows in Asia, the Shape of You singer has said these could be set for the end of 2023. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.